Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited for this next guest because I think she's just so bold in everything she does, but also she's a copy expert and the author of something you got to hear called Tough Titties. Ladies and gentlemen, Laura is on the show today. How are you?
I'm great. I was going to ask how family friendly this needs to be, but since you announced my book title, I'm guessing it's okay.
Hey,
whatever I say.
Hey, it's personality. It's who makes you who you are, it's character, and I'm all here for it. Somebody right now is just listening to the podcast, right? They're like, all right, who's Laura? You hyped her up. I got to go through the show notes. I got to click her Instagram handles. Tell us a little bit about, life for you growing up. Like, where are you from?
Oh, I'm from New York. Your listeners can't see it, but my sweatshirt right there, New York. When this is I'm getting the left side. There we go. New York. Born and raised on the Upper West Side. I grew up there in the 70s. I'm happy to date myself. I'm proud of my age. So I grew up there when it was gritty and dirty and filled with muggers and pimps and hookers and all the kinds of people who'd rub up against you in the arcade when you were playing video games. So that's where I'm from.
So like being, from New York, right? I can imagine it created a level of grit, right? Like tell us a little bit about like just childhood for you. Like as you're going through these early ages, is there lessons or there things that, that was just making you tough to give you that, that type of vibe or energy that you give off today?
You know what? I was like, I was pretty much a good girl, but you see if you walk around New York today, every kid has a nanny holding their hand up till age like 30. We didn't have that then. I took the bus and the subway by myself starting at age 10, 11. Bus first, then subway, went into video arcades in Times Square, and well, I stole money from my parents to play Space Invaders and Pac-Man. That's not a tip. Steal money from your parents is not a tip. I got caught and wasn't worth it. But I don't know if my growing up really gave me a layer of true grit. It's not like I'm not one of those people who started working when she was, 10, and I got an allowance for doing pretty much nothing and then stole money on top of it. One thing, one thing from growing up that I think did affect me and who I am is seeing my parents. A lot of people get like a tough work ethic from their parents. What I got from mine was permission to be a late bloomer. Both my parents pivoted pretty late in life. My dad he worked for the airlines, for Eastern Airlines, no longer in existence, and then for American Airlines, and then switched to become a psychologist, a psychotherapist. And my mother worked in the recording industry. And she recorded like Joan Baez and Country Joe and the Fish, and she was there when they rejected Bob Dylan when he came for a recording contract. Yeah. And then she switched when I was in my teens to become a children's book editor. So both big pivots. Both of them gave up a lot of perks that I would have liked. I would have chosen for them to pivot the other way, but they were role models of like taking your time, figuring out what you want to do, not having to stick with one thing for your entire life. And I consider myself the consummate late bloomer, just in all things. I mean, I didn't learn to drive till I was 20 and then gave it up because I'm terrible at it. Didn't get married till I was 37. Didn't leave the house till I was 26. Didn't start my business until I was 40. And made my first million in a year at age 50. So I've taken my time.
Oh wow! I mean, and obviously, your parents obviously put something into you that's made you who you are today. If you were to look back and say, "All right, Shawn, this is the biggest lesson I learned from my mom," or "This is the biggest lesson I learned from my dad," what would that be for you?
Do what you love and wait to find it. I mean, I think that in some ways that held me back because I rejected so much. I'm not somebody who dove into things like, oh, I'll just give it a try. I was very picky and like, well, I'm not going to like that and I'm not going to like that. But on the other hand, I have given myself the grace to take my time figuring out what I really want to do and making sure that it fulfills me and that it's work that I love doing. That was always really important to me.
You know what I like about what you just said? I think it's important that we break it down. Is taking your time with certain things, right? You talked about being a late bloomer. By you waiting to achieve, these milestones in life. Do you think that puts you at an advantage because you're like, all right, I know the right things to do. I know the wrong things to do. Do you think that gave you any type of upside into achieving the results you have?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I see a lot of people, and I'm always envious of them too, who follow the steps, who plow ahead. They know exactly what they want, and they go and get it, and they work, 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 and achieve and soar. But a lot of them, I feel like they crash and burn also. They burn out fast. And so I think taking my time has given me longevity, given me, I think, a different kind of stamina where I can be in this for the long haul. I figured out something that doesn't feel relentless, that I could do till the end of time, and that I would do most of it. I would do for free, even if I didn't have to work. And so that it gave me that. I think that if I had been somebody who rushed it and who had to, achieve all the things and do all the things, on a timeline, on everybody else's timeline, I think I'd be burnt to a crisp by now and figuring out what to do next and wondering who I am.
Yeah, that's key. That's a breakdown, right? Because sometimes you'll fall in the trap of thinking what other people are doing is what you should be doing. Have you
Yeah.
ever, in your life, it seems like you studied the right moves to make in your life. Have you ever looked at something and you said, you know what? That's something I should probably not do right now, but maybe something I can add to my business later. There's a lot of people listening to this show that are entrepreneurs, that are, business owners, or perhaps, they're starting something completely different in the career field. What would be your advice to
Yeah.
them that are thinking that question right now, that they don't have to put everything in their bag, but they can wait to the right time to execute?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe in starting before you're ready, and that's never been a strength of mine. It's a skill that I've developed. It's not a natural strength. I'm a waiter, I'm a holdbacker, I'm someone who loves her comfort zone. So I do believe in not following my example necessarily, and waiting to be ready to do things. I think starting before you're ready is key. And I have also been a classic overthinker
Mm.
and thought like, okay, I'll figure this out. I'll think my way into creating something awesome, or I'll think my way into like, how am I going to make the kind of money I want to make? What am I going to create? Let me think about it for several years. Let me come up with the ideas and float them past all my friends and have them all say, that's genius, you should do it. And then wait until somebody else does it and then be crushed. Like, not a good path. I think the way to go, and this is something that I've learned over time, is velocity, the idea of momentum and velocity. Like, when you have an idea, go for it. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for validation. Don't wait for everybody to say that it's brilliant. In fact, that's a good way to talk yourself out of something you're excited about. You already get the done feeling from asking around and getting approval and people saying, that's awesome, you've got to do it. You already feel like you did it.
Mm.
So my lesson that has taken me a while to learn is actually do go for those things. Like, pounce on those ideas that you have, slap slap shit up against throw shit against the wall and see what sticks. But in terms of what you should wait for, I don't. I'm glad that I waited to take steps like hiring somebody. I think I think there's a lot of pressure for people who start businesses, like raise your prices now, hire somebody now, don't wait, do it at the very beginning. And sometimes you don't have the resources to do that. Sometimes you don't know what you would want somebody to do.
Mm.
So I think that there is so that's something that I waited a long time to do, and probably and too long to do maybe, but I don't regret it. I think I was ready when I did it. I hired one person and it changed everything in my business. But I'm not sorry that I waited till I knew what I was doing and where my business was going, maybe to
Yeah.
do something like that.
I love that. I mean, you talk about, not waiting, and just start going after what you want. So many people, they get advice. They hear from their mom, they hear from their family members. And sometimes that advice is bad advice, right? Like sometimes they're
Yeah.
listening to it and they're like, okay, maybe I should do this or maybe I shouldn't do it. And it tends to throw them off, tends to throw them, to another avenue, something they shouldn't probably even create. So I love that advice, hearing that from you. So as you develop and learn all these different things, right? Coming from New York, what was your interest, or when did you realize you had a skill set in copy? Because I want to break that down to the
Nah.
audience, because so many people, they're like, you got Laura on the show. You got to give us the tips, right? Tell me, like, when did you realize there was a way for you to really make a business out of copy? I want to know that first.
Okay, so my first experience copywriting was at a magazine. I got an internship at this magazine. It was called Spy Magazine. It was this cool downtown New York City, like satirical magazine, the cool place to work. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with writing. This internship was on the editorial side, and I bombed at it. I was terrible. I was the worst intern because I was supposed to be pitching ideas. I was supposed to be getting into journalism and going out and looking for stories to pitch, like with a reporter's notebook.
Yeah.
And I realized pretty quickly, over those 6 months of my internship, that wasn't what I wanted to do, and it wasn't my skill set. And it's a skill set I could have developed had I liked the idea of it. And then I was lucky enough, when my internship was up and nobody was gonna offer me a job on the editorial side for doing nothing, I was lucky enough to get offered a job on the other side, the ad side. They were all on one floor. It was a small place, so we all knew each other, and they were like, "Hey, we've got a place for you. Come on over here." And the first thing that they had me write was an advertorial for Dewar's Scotch. So, an advertorial, if you don't know, is those pages, when you're flipping through the magazine, those pages of the magazine that at first look like part of the magazine, but then you see in tiny print advertisement at the top, right?
Yeah.
So I was taxed with writing a page that felt just like a page from Spy, that would be funny and quirky and all about doers. So I created a quiz called "Do You Party Like Your Uncle Marty?" And it was a quiz to determine whether you were whether you were cool or a big old fart loser. Poor uncles really get a bad rap. And then an essay on what being a grown up is. Not like I knew, but I winged it. I was 22 at the time, and so not grown up. But so I created this page all around doers, and there was a recipe in the sidebar for a cocktail. And that was my first stab at copywriting. And people don't realize there's so many different kinds of copywriting. Like people listening right now, your listeners probably think of copywriting as just the words on a website, or direct response
Yeah.
copywriting, which is, buy now, click here. But there's also advertorial things in a magazine, stuff like that, or things that we would mail to potential advertisers saying, here's why you should advertise in the fall issue. And we put little ads in it. So I was writing that kind of stuff in the beginning. And I
Wow.
realized, I'm like, oh, here's a kind of writing I can do, because it's writing short things,
Mm.
short, fun things. And then a friend of mine from Spy later, when I was at New York Magazine next, and in a very corporate job that I really didn't like. And a friend from Spy came to meet me for lunch, and he was writing promos for VH1.
Wow.
And I said, "What are promos?" And he said, "Oh, well, I watch a lot of TV and then I write funny little things that go during the commercials, but for the shows." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's a job. I need that job." And so he hooked me up, like, it was just a good time, very good timing. They needed more writers, and he hooked me up with a gig writing promos for them. And so that was another kind of copywriting, just
Wow.
writing funny little things, for the network. And I went from there to Nickelodeon and Nick at Night, which was the place for promos. I had loved their promos. I watched tons of Nick at Night. I watched Leave It to Beaver and all their old shows, and and knew that I loved their promos before I even knew what promos were. So it was just a dream job, and I did it for years and years. But again, it had nothing to do with the kind of copywriting that I do now. And I realized that I could do that when I spoke at my friend Marie Forleo's event. It was for her first live event. Marie Forleo is the creator of a program called B School, and she had a live event called Rich, Happy, and Hot Live. That was her brand back then.
Yeah.
And we were friends from hip hop classic Crunch. That's where we'd met, and she knew me through that and knew that I wrote copy for TV, and she said, "Will you talk about copy at my live event?" And I said, "Sure, I'll give a talk about copy." And so I gave a talk that was called 5 Secrets to Non-Sucky Copy, and people started coming up to me afterwards and saying, "I'm a realtor. Can you help me with my copy? Can you help me with my website copy? Can you
Hmm.
help me with this?" And I was like, "Sure." I didn't really have any doubts that I could do it because I knew most people were terrible writers, and most people don't know how to write like they talk. It's an acquired skill, and so their writing comes out very stiff and businessy. So I knew that I could do that. I knew I could help them make it better, and that's how I started writing the kind of copy that I do now for entrepreneurs and small businesses and solopreneurs and people like that.
Yeah, that's crazy good story. I mean, from, starting a job to then realizing, what, maybe I can take this to a different level. And then also for you to sit back and realize what were the questions that people were coming to you for, and then realize, okay, maybe I need to switch the business model up. It was very impressive. So I want to talk about something that's important because you just hinted
Yeah.
towards it. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, people are listening to this right now, wanting to get their emails open, wanting to get them read,
Mm.
wanting to get paid, wanting to be that inbox hero that you talk about, right? So break it down for our audience. What are what are some tips? Give us 3 to 5 tips on how people can go from nobody reading their message to people opening it and purchasing their products, and most importantly,
Mhm.
becoming a part of their community.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I like to make every email that I write to my list feel like what I call an EFAB. That's an email from a bestie.
Mm.
I think it is the most important thing to sound like a human talking to a human, and more than that, a friend. Because think about first the way we go through our actual mail. If anyone still picks up mail from the mailbox, which you should on occasion, there might be something important in there. We take the stack and we hold it over the garbage can. We go junk mail, junk mail, junk mail, junk mail. Something for me. Junk mail, junk mail, junk mail. Something for me.
Yep.
And that something for me is so exciting when there's actually an envelope with handwriting on it, and when it's real handwriting and not fake, from a credit card company. And so that's the exact same way we go through our inbox. We scroll through it going junk mail, junk mail, junk mail, junk mail, something for me. And a lot of it is stuff that we signed up for. And most of it we skip, even though we signed up for it, until we hit something that's so intriguing and so compelling at a glance. And that feels like it's from a person
Wow.
to us. Like it actually feels like, oh, this was written to me. This is, even if cognitively we know this is a newsletter, if the subject line and preview text, which I'll talk about in a second, say broadcast that this is from a person to a person, and feels like it's from a friend, then we will open it. So subject lines are key.
Mm.
Right. This is, I mean, these are how we get our emails open. I can talk about the content of the emails too,
Yeah, yeah.
but the
Real quick,
first thing,
real quick with the subject
yeah,
line, right? So many people are like,
yeah,
all right, Shawn, she said it, she said it. What subject lines are you seeing are working the best? Like, are they subject lines that are like personally saying people's
yeah.
names? Are they subject lines that are like a call to action? Like, what are you seeing work the best in terms of subject lines?
Okay, so what works the best for me and what works the best on me when I'm looking through my own inbox are subject lines that are written very casually and informally. If the subject line is written in title case, let's just start there. Title case meaning the first letter of each word is capitalized, like a book title, skip it. I do not open it.
Mm.
And I never send anything that looks like that, that's formal like that, because it screams newsletter. And things that are in terms of, so I like to write informally. No, I don't even capitalize the first letter sometimes. I write it in the form that I would write a text, where we've gotten really sloppy, right? But I take that sloppiness and I send it send it to my list because now texts are how we receive messages from our friends. So I like to take that form and put it in and use it for the subject line. So you might see
Mm.
no punctuation at all and definitely no capital letters. That's my style. It might not be right for you. Um, but in terms of what kinds of subject lines work for me, it's not so much the straightforward, like, here are 5 tips to, jack up your open rates. It's not so tactical as it is usually intriguing, mysterious, um, maybe a little bit of conflict and story in the subject line. So one of my most opened ever is have to cancel, and
Oh
then I
man.
think it might have had a frowny face. Yeah, something like that. And then the body of the email is, so everyone opened that. They were like, "Oh, is this for me? What's canceled?" And the body of the email was about how those are my favorite 3 words to hear, because I love it when plans are canceled. So it was just all about that. Another one that's really popular that is part of a launch sequence that I do for Inbox Hero is dude, just dude, and people open it, they're like, dude, what? So things that you would write to a friend. And then
Wow.
sometimes I'll put things in, like, sometimes I'll get really crafty and use the person's name, because you can personalize your subject lines.
Yeah.
So it might be like, so and so's emails, like Anthony's email. So you get one that would say Anthony's emails, and you'd be like, what about my emails? And you'd open it up and say, and another one that I have is, would say, I'm in love with Anthony,
Oh, that's smart.
and in quotation marks. So quotation marks can work really well. I have a whole guide to subject lines, like my 33 most open subject lines. If your people want that, if you want me to give it as gift.
Oh yeah,
Um,
we could put it in the show notes. I like that idea. That's
okay,
great.
awesome. Yeah, so it's non-sucky subject lines. It's my 33 most open subject lines and 4 that tanked and why. Plus templates to make your own. So they're all different kinds there. Some are more instructional, imply that there's going to be something tactical in there, and some are just totally mysterious and intriguing. But it just has to have a little bit of friction and conflict in there. For instance, something quirky like, um, why I love blueberries. Meh, who cares? I don't care why you love blueberries, even if that's a quirky thing about you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it has to have, I mean, it might be, I was almost killed by a blueberry, and that I might open.
Yeah, because then I'm thinking, yo, something life threatening has happened.
Yeah. You want stakes or something, some kind of grit, some kind of friction in your attention in the subject line that makes us have to open it.
Okay, so let's go beyond the subject line, right? Let's say
Yeah.
I got into, I opened the email now, the blueberry one, or, I opened the email about dude. Like, what's some of the substance that's inside of that email that will lead to an
Mhm.
actual, an action from the person listening
Y
or reading?
Yes, an action or trust or some, yeah, the person engaging with you in some way. Well, first, I don't wanna skip this. the other part of getting the email open, getting them to open it, besides that trust that you're building over time, so
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, I'll open anything that you send me," is the preview text. So we'll get to the content in a second, but this is a trick
Mm.
that almost nobody talks about. So, when you're scrolling through your inbox and there are a few under the subject line, there are 2 lines or sometimes 3 lines, depending on your settings,
Yeah.
that you see. People ignore that. They don't use it at all. They don't leverage that. So what you see is the junk, the housekeeping items in
Yeah.
the top that scream newsletter. So it'll say like such and such company, Flower Girl, CC, or like TM, whatever, 2019, all rights reserved. Want to see this in your browser? Click here. And so at a glance, that just tells our brain newsletter. So you can customize that part to make it like a second subject line so that it supports your subject line or works pairs with it. You don't have to put all the information in your subject line, which takes a lot of the pressure off.
Yeah.
And then you can put like, if, you can put a teaser there. And I think that you should always pay attention to that preview text and look at it. Send yourself a test and look at it in your own inbox and ask yourself, does this make me want to click it open? So
Mm.
there's that. So now when we're talking about the body of the email,
Yeah.
when I talked about making it feel like an EFAB, it's not just in the subject line, it's also in the body of the email and your writing style. So you want to be conversational, friendly, write to one person. I heard my friend Amy Porterfield say this on here also, so I will reiterate when she said, "Don't write to lots of people." There's something I've always talked about is don't always make sure that you are writing to one person, not just in your mind, not just somebody that you picture, but also in the text that you're writing. You don't want to address a crowd because people aren't gathered around a laptop reading an email together, but by the fire. So you don't want to say, "Hey, everybody," or "Hey, friends." Not only because there's a slight disconnect there when you're reading the email,
Mm.
but also because it takes a feeling of responsibility off of the reader. When you're like, your parent sends you a forward to that's like and CCs everybody they know. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh God, I'm
Why'd you
like
tell them?
nothing worse. Why now? Here come all the reply alls. My dad used to do this, and he would complain to me and say nobody responded to my email. And I'd say, well, that's because you sent it to a whole group. Nobody feels they have to respond to it. They
That's
don't even
tough.
feel like they have to open it or read it as soon as they see it's to a whole group because there's a diffusion of responsibility. So you want to address one person
Mm.
and make that person and talk to them as if they are your good friend or your best friend. So you want to make your tone, you want to make your prose really conversational. And one trick for doing that is people are like, I don't know how to write like I talk,
Yeah.
even though that sounds like really simple advice. And then when they sit down, somehow they have on an imaginary like beret and like now I'm Shakespeare, or like a briefcase and shoulder pads, like now I am a business person. So one thing that you might notice yourself doing because this has been drilled into us is avoiding contractions.
Mm.
So contractions are those combo words like instead of should not, shouldn't, or instead of I will, I'll, wheel, you were. So those words are that's how we talk when we're talking in real life. We
Yep.
don't say you will never guess who is coming to the party tonight. You'd say you'll never guess who's coming to the party tonight, right?
Yep.
So to get yourself doing contractions, first of all, you just want to work that right, if you're a touch typer, that right pinky, the one that touches your old friend, Mr. Apostrophe. So get in the habit of putting in apostrophes, making contractions, and you'll probably find that you don't do it naturally. So you want to start reading your stuff aloud, read it out loud, and where you find yourself changing it on the page or where you find yourself changing it with your voice, like I don't talk that way, change it on the page accordingly. So that's to make
That's
it
powerful.
conversational.
That's powerful
It
advice.
makes a huge difference. It
And
makes a huge difference.
and it makes you so real and it makes you so authentic. And I think that's the key, right? Instead of sounding like I robot, like when people
Hmm.
read something, it gives them also your sense of personality. And I like that, like the
Yes.
fact that you broke it down like that. And in terms of someone that they get all those X's, they get all those T's crossed, those I's dotted, and they're
Hmm.
trying to get someone to do the final call to action, make the purchase. Like
Yeah.
what's some of your best, your copy tips on getting people to do that?
Okay, well, first of all, you want to build a connection over time. That's the great thing about email is not every email, I mean, depending on what your business is. If you're selling like pillowcases, then you probably want every email to sell. But if you are selling something like information, if you're an expert, a coach, anyone in that business, a service-based business, you want to build connection over time, and you're not going to, I don't think that you're going to sell in every email. You're
Yeah.
going to send some emails that are okay. So we hear this buzzword value, right? You're
Yeah.
in Clubhouse. That's where we met. So
Yeah.
you probably hear it constantly. I'm here to add value, adding
Every two
value, adding
minutes.
value
Every
every
two
two
minutes.
damn minutes. I can't take it. It's the most overused word. And we get the impression, if we're in the marketing world at all, that value has to mean actionable tips.
Yeah.
It does not. There are so many kinds of value that you
Tell
can
them.
deliver in your emails. So you are delivering value if you make me see something differently. If you
Mm,
make me say, huh, I never thought of it that way. Or that's exactly what I was thinking, but I didn't know how to say it. Or, oh, I'm so glad I'm not alone. Or just if you make me laugh, if you entertain me, like that is tons of value. If you take me away from what I'm supposed to be doing right then, just for a second, and if you make me want to, if you send me something that I want to forward to somebody, like you've got to read this, that's value. So it does not have to be an actionable tip. It can be sometimes, but I think you want to mix it up and tell stories about your life.
mm.
They can be stories about your life or they can be stories about somebody else if that's more your style. But stories are what create that connection with our reader. And I vote for showing it all. I'm an oversharer. And I think it serves me really well because people know so much about me that they feel they know me. And then when it comes time to buy from me, when I send that email saying it's open, cart's open, buy now,
Yeah.
they even skip the sales page. They go to the sales page and skip right to the buy button because it's like, oh, Laura's my friend. We haven't met, but I feel like she's my friend. I know everything about her. And I know that she is, I know that she's living in sweatpants that her husband calls her given ups. And I know, I know where she grew up. I know that she's obsessed with spaghetti and Real Housewives. And I know about that time that, somebody yanked down her halter top when she was in sixth grade. So they know all these stories about me. They feel connected with me. And that's why they buy. It's not
Yo,
just it's not
I
it's
love
not just
this.
the buyer psychology that I use in that email when I want them to buy. In terms of that, you do want to know, like, what is this person's what problems do they have? What are their pain points? And not just their pain points, but their desires. Because also when you talk, when you hear about how to write good copy, you hear a lot about pain points.
Mm,
And not everybody wants to speak to pain all the time. And that's not
tell them.
always what you're going to be doing, right? Like if you are, if you're selling, I don't know, chiropractic services and the person is in dire pain, has terrible back pain, then you might want to be talking about their pain. But even then, you might want to be talking about their desire. Like, how many times have you looked out the window and wish you could go for a run, but you can't? This
Mm,
is going to help you get back to the things that you love. So you can talk about desire in that way. But most things are that I sell, I do it from a desire place. Like, here's the course that's going to help you bankroll your life with emails, not like wish you were better at emails, wish it weren't so painful to write emails, wish you didn't want to throw your computer out the window every time you sit down to write. That's fine. But I like to come from a place of desire and know what things make them say, oh, I want that.
mm.
So,
So you're writing from a place of, you're gonna want to open this email because what I'm about to send you, you're gonna need. And I think
yeah, you're
that's
good.
the key.
Mhm.
That's the
Yeah,
key.
you're gonna need, and it's gonna make you're gonna be really excited about getting it. not like this is a dire problem that you have. Some people are solving a dire problem, but some of us are just filling a desire,
Mm.
or doing both. And I do like to come at it from that place.
Love that angle. I mean, you came up here, you gave advice, you gave gems. I mean, you gave, I like to call it hard diamonds because you're giving people the play by play. Like this is gold here. So somebody's like listening to this podcast, and I got to ask you this question because we ask every person this question that's been on this show, whether, they've crossed this stage or whether they dropped out of school completely, asking themselves the question of the podcast: school's over, now what? What advice will Laura give?
Well, I would give hmm, there's some okay, so anybody who's like, I have to start a business because I've been immersed in this business world, and it's what everybody's saying to do, and everyone's saying don't work for the man and don't work to build somebody else's dream. If you have a longing to work for somebody, that's great too. And I think it's a really worthwhile thing to do, to go into the workforce and work around other people in a job. I'm not saying that you have to, but I am saying that, dismiss everything that you're hearing. I feel like now we're getting the opposite advice. It used to be, you've got to be on this track you've got to become a doctor or a lawyer or have a job with job security and get 401k. And the rebellion was, no, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to start my own thing. Now the rebellious step is, I'm not going to have a business. I actually want to work for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to say that that is okay, because it can be incredibly fulfilling and worthwhile. And you meet people that you wouldn't normally. So that's one bit of advice. If you feel called to to find a job and to work in a company, that's awesome. Now, if you feel called to start your own business, to start your own thing, and you're like, I am not hireable. I'm never going to be hireable. I'm never going to be employable because I will never fit into corporate life, which I did not, by the way. I can't get anywhere by 9 or 10 even. I mean, noon was a stretch for me. That was hard for me. So if you're that person and feel really excited about starting something of your own, one thing that I will say is nobody has to give you permission. So many people wait for permission, like we were talking about before. Do you think this idea is good? Do you think this idea is good?
Yep.
Do you think I can do this? Is this something that's needed? We ask so many people instead of just trying it. So you don't need permission from anybody. And if you are looking to, like, say, get clients and you need work to show in order to get clients, make your own work. I mean, if
Mm.
you're looking, especially if you're going into copywriting, everyone's like, well, what do I do? People want to see work. They want to see examples of work, and nobody's hired me yet. Nobody has to hire you. You could go write up your own First of all, you can write a website for yourself
Yep.
that shows your skills. That's how I started getting clients, really, is because they saw my website and they saw, okay, I like your writing style, even if you're not showing any of the kind of work that we want from you. Like your writing style, it's proof of concept. So we'll hire you. You can write your own website. You can do tear downs. You can start even like developing and showing your expertise as you develop it by saying, here are 3 sales page teardowns I did. Here's why these sales pages, here's how these sales pages could be improved. And people will look at those and say, wow, this person's an expert and authority. I need to hire them. So no one has to give you permission to start and to create your own work to show.
I love that. And it's so real because nobody has to give you the permission to do anything. If you've been listening to this podcast right now and you feel that urge to make it happen, you heard it from Laura herself, go out here and do it. So many people right now are inspired by this episode. They want to know more about you, where they can find you. Give them all of your social media handles and everything so they can stay in touch with what you got coming up next.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, first of all, please come find me at my digital home, talkingshrimp.com. And that subject line freebie that we talked about, it's so good. I have to say, it's really a lifesaver if you want help with your subject line. So, that's at talkingshrimp.com/subject subject lines, all one word. And then find me on Instagram. I'm there as Talking Shrimp NYC. Talking Shrimp was taken by somebody with like 10 followers and she didn't want to give it up, and 0 posts. So Talking Shrimp NYC it is. And I am on Clubhouse as Laura Belgray. Who knows by the time they're listening to this, whether or not I'll be interested in Clubhouse. Remains to be seen. I burned out after about a week. And you can find me on Facebook, but those are the main places, Talking Shrimp NYC and talkingshrimp.com.
Awesome. Listen, Laura, you came in. You absolutely provided so much value to the show. We're excited to have you on this episode and look forward to putting it out. And for those of you that have been listening to this, always remember something that is very important. Always remember, dream it, believe it, go out and get it. Hey, what's up, fam? Thanks for watching. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button, smash that like button. We'll see you next week here at School's Over Now What. And always remember, dream it, believe it, go out